Hello, welcome to my channel. My name is Joshua, and I decided that I'm going to make a video about my testimony as a Christian. And I've been a Christian for a few years, for a while now, and but I decided that I wanted to make a YouTube video about this. So I hope it comes in useful, and I hope you enjoy watching this and you learn something. And please feel free to share all your wonderful stories about how you got saved down in the comment section below if you'd like. But yeah, anyways, if I'm gonna start, for the sake of time, I'll try to make this short and to the point. I believed in God, and in a childish way, and I loved God in a childish way because I was a child for a long time, and I was saved as a child when I was 7. But then by the age of 13 or 14, I decided to instead go my own way, and I lived a rebellious life. I was kind of like the prodigal son, because I knew about God, then I decided to leave Him, although I didn't act like I was not saved. I decided to live the way I wanted to live. And to basically sum up my lifestyle, I was a lying, thieving, adulterous, fornicating, hating, murderous. I didn't murder anybody, but you know how Jesus says, if you hate anybody in your heart, it's like you've murdered them. And I was bitter, and I was violent, and I just was a mess, to sum things up. And I did a lot of messed up things. I did a lot of sinful things, and like we all do. And I think above all, I was selfish and prideful, and I didn't want to let God or trust God enough to let Him love me and let Him take control of my life and let Him forgive me. Because there were a lot of things going on, and I didn't love myself very much. I also felt like I had to justify myself to be loved, even by Him, and that I couldn't ask for help because that was weakness, and that was cheating, basically. And that's how I thought about it. Cheating. It was cheating to ask God for help with anything, unless it was a life or death situation, because then that was when you had to go ask Him. But that's basically how I looked at it, and I lived in a lot of sin. And I tried to fix my shortcomings and my flaws, my sinful lifestyle by myself, and it wasn't working, and I instead became more depressed and more anxious. And you would not believe how many times I've tried to make this testimony video, and it seems like it's very difficult to make for some reason. There's a lot of obstacles in the way, but I just pray that, although this is very simple, and I'm not going into the details, that this is meaningful. Eventually became very depressed and anxious due to my sinful, rebellious lifestyle. And was very self-centered, selfish, and caught up in lies and all that, and I was miserable, basically. But it's amazing how when you're miserable, living the way you want to live, you fear what's on the other side. You know how everybody says, oh, the grass is greener on the other side? Well, in my case, I was worried there wasn't any grass, because I was worried that life would just be so much less pleasurable if I had to give up and surrender to God and Jesus and ask Him to be my Savior for real, to for real serve Him, to serve Him first, and it's still a struggle, today to choose that. But it's always incredibly refreshing and relaxing and wonderful, and just it's always incredibly surprising as well when you do, because when you do, you realize that it was all worth it to give it up, and you just kind of wish and think to yourself, how did I not do this sooner? So my testimony is I struggled with basically bending my knees to God and to being submissive to God. I hated being submissive to anybody, and that included him. But with him, submission to him wasn't really, it was respect and love that he filled me with. It wasn't a way to be tyrannical, That's not why it was important. It was necessary for me to do that in order to receive the great gifts that he had for me. And for the longest time I was stubborn and I didn't want to do that. And it left me very hollow inside, very empty. And I'd have to seek instant gratification, kind of things that would give me, like porn and fighting and dangerous, risky behavior and illegal activity and things like that, to make myself feel alive and to make myself feel not as empty. But it didn't last long, so I eventually caved in, and after the course of a few weeks, this process happened where it started where I believe at least that it started where I was jumping across this canyon, and there was water beneath, but there was a bunch of jagged rocks, and if you missed the water or you didn't land on the other side of the canyon, you could get very hurt. And I saw a lot of other guys a little older than me doing it, and I wanted to fit in and show them that I wasn't scared. So I tried to do it, and I found myself on the ledge of that canyon, and I saw that I just missed, basically dashing my head against the rocks and dying. And of course everybody later told me how stupid I was, and I was being stupid. But something in my mind happened when that happened. Something kind of clicked, and I realized that's what my life was like. I was standing on the edge, and the canyon didn't have water where my life was. The canyon had fire below it, and I was standing on the edge, not quite wanting, not dead, but I wasn't in a good spot, and Satan almost had me. And I realized, had I missed, I wasn't sure where I was going to go. I wasn't at peace. I mean, nobody should be doing stupid stuff like that, but I wasn't at peace with where I would go. I was worried I might not go to heaven. Then the second thing that happened was, after I realized that, and where I stood, and how I realized that my sinful life was actually cutting me off from God. And later on, when I studied the Bible a little bit more, I saw that the sins that I was committing were sins where it was clear that if you committed these things, like adultery, lying, fornication, and all these other things that I was doing, you could not enter the kingdom of heaven. And that's who I was. I was this embodiment. I let these sins latch onto me, and I lived in them. in the mire of them. And I know I'm all getting into rhetoric and stuff, but or at least trying. But it was very unsettling to realize that. So the second thing was when I was going and I was participating in this thing, an outreach to an Indian tribe near where I lived at the time, and I was doing it more to see what the Indian Reserve was like, more than because I really wanted to help. It wasn't because I wanted to help, it was because I wanted to see what the Indian Reserve was like. So to sum things up, I was lost, right? Like I said, and rebellious. Then when I was on the edge of that cliff and I realized, like literally jumping off the edge of that, jumping off the canyon to the other side, realizing where I was, and then I go to this Indian reservation and I see all these kids and how they're absorbing the gospel and the good news, because it was a Christian endeavor to feed these kids who were malnourished. And even though they were going through all the things that they were going through, I was being so selfish and so ungrateful to a God who had blessed me my whole life. Because I literally have been blessed my whole life in so many ways. And it kind of made me think, it made me put into perspective how I was holding on to these sins that I thought gave me happiness, but I saw these kids who had none of those things, none of the basic things that I even had, like food, and they were happy to hear the gospel. They were happy, and they were overjoyed to hear that, and that put things into perspective for me. But the moment didn't. Those were like seeds, but the moment of it sprouting and me actually repenting and submitting to God was when I fell on my knees one day as I was about to commit the same sin that I've been doing over and over and over again, that I tried to break myself free of, and I did not succeed. And I was lost. And I gave up, I was like, yeah, I can't do it by myself. And I honestly was tired of trying. And life just wasn't very great anymore. So I fall on my knees and I'm just kind of crying, and literally I lift my hands up to the sky, and I'm in my room on my knees, and I have nothing to offer God, nothing, no other options, no choice for me. It was clear that everything else was a waste of time. There was no real second option. That I needed Jesus, and I needed to actually not half commit to him and say with my words that I loved him, and with my actions that I hated him. I needed to be sincere for him. And I fell on the ground and asked for his forgiveness, and I asked for him to help me to get rid of these sins that I struggled in my mind to get rid of, because half of me wanted to keep on to these sins and the other half of me knew it was wrong and wanted to get rid of them. My depression lifted, and so did my anxiety, except that took a little bit of time. But the depression instantly lifted. I could see the world like it was in color again. And I was just happy to do the simple things in life, I could go and walk around in the forest and just feel at peace and happy. And I didn't feel this weighing down, this intense desire to go find something to distract myself, because the simple things still gave me joy, which was amazing. And then, he just helped me grow, because he helped me to learn how to surrender my career, my life, basically, my romantic relationships, not being ashamed of the light that I have inside of me, and not being afraid that what he has to offer isn't better than what I have in mind, and that I need to let him take control. But yeah, that's my testimony. I was depressed, and I know maybe it's not the most crazy, most interesting testimony that you've listened to, but for me it's very important, because it showed me where my breaking point was, and that I'm so glad that I came to that, because had I remained a prideful, selfish person, and I still am sometimes, but if I had lived that way, I would have lost everything. Anyways, it looks like my family's here, so time to end the video. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you want, like and subscribe. Bye. Guys.